runes are a supernatural power used by giants with great efficiency and magical effects, and Rune Knights are the people who can harness those powers and use them for themselves. Hey fellow Game Masters, I'm Richard Quiner, and welcome back to the RPG Daily, your daily dose of all things tabletop role-playing games, helping you build your world and master your game. Months later, we're continuing the fighter class with the Rune Knight subclass. We're going to keep talking about this and how this all works. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Richard. I make videos about D&D and tabletop RPGs, and today we're talking about the fighters in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, so come join us. So, Rune Knights use the power of runes, but runes, just by reading from the book, we learn are from the giants. Giants have some powerful magics themselves. They've harnessed those magics into runes, which are, carvings of lines and things. Oversimplification, I know. But runes are something that are so common among giants that pretty much every family of giants has a Rune Carver as just part of the family. But in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, you don't really play giants. You don't get to play those. So how does your player character learn about these runes and be able to use this power for themselves? Well, that's where you get to be creative and decide for yourself. Maybe you met a friendly giant, a big friendly giant, and they taught you how to use the runes over some time. You hung out with them, you became buddies, they showed you the runes. Maybe you met another scholarly person who had learned about the runes from the giants directly, and then they taught you. Maybe you were born with. Or maybe you pulled a Skyrim and you went into some dungeons and you found the runes carved on the rock and somehow was able to read them. No judgment here. But in the big picture of Rune Knights, how you learned it doesn't really matter, but what you can do with these runes is the most important thing. So we're going to dive into all the abilities of the Rune Knight. At level 3, when you choose this subclass, you gain new proficiencies. The first proficiency you're going to get is the language of giants. So that's cool. So keep that in mind if you're building a character to become a Rune Knight. They don't need to learn giant early on because they're going to get it for free later. You also gain the proficiency of smith's tools. So that's another one that you don't necessarily need to know early on, because you're going to get it later anyway. Also at level 3, you learn the ability Rune Carver. This is kind of your bread and butter as a Rune Knight, is to be able to make runes and use them. What are the runes? In this video, I'm going to explain how they work, and then come back for the next video when I actually explain all the different runes, because there's a lot of them, and like a lot of the fighter subclasses, you have a lot of options there. So we'll cover those in the next video. This one, though, we're going to talk about how they work. A rune is a carving that you do on an item or something that you carry that gives you a special power. How you use them is when you finish a long rest, you may inscribe an item or an object that you carry with one of your runes that you know. You can do this a number of times equal to the amount of runes that you know. So it's similar to artificers in that sense. You have a limit of how many runes you know, which limits how many runes you can inscribe after a long rest. The item that you can carve the runes on should be something that you either wear or can carry in your hand. So you have weapons, shields, armor, jewelry, rings, not a building, but you get the idea. It's something that you wear or carry on your person, can have a rune on it. Each item that you inscribe a rune onto can only have one rune inscribed onto it, and each rune can only be inscribed onto one item. So from that, there is no double runing of an item, so you can't stack them all up on the same armor to have this super rune armor. The runes each give different boosts that come into play. Some runes do have a level cap that you have to reach in order to access that rune, which we'll also go on about in the next video. And if some runes have an ability that requires a saving throw of any sort, the save is going to be your proficiency plus 8 plus your constitution ability score modifier. So it's usually right around 13 or 14 at the beginning. It depends on how high you've beefed up your constitution. When you first gain this Rune Carver ability at level 3, you will know 2 runes. And every time you level up and take a level in fighter, you'll be able to exchange one rune for a new one. Kind of like a spell swap or artificer infusion swap. At levels 7, 10, and 15, though, you gain an additional rune slot, an additional rune that you know. So at level 7, you'll know 3 runes. At level 10, you'll know 4, and 15, you'll know 5. So the maximum amount of runes that you can know is 5, which could be like a whole suit of rune armor, clothing, weapon setup. It's a lot of runes. So again, though, 1 rune per item and only 1 use per rune per long rest. is kind of the situation you find yourselves in. But that is the Rune Carver. Like I said, come back to in 2 days. I'll have another video on the runes themselves and what they do. Also at level 3, you gain an activated ability called Giant's Might. This lets you, as a bonus action, gain the powers and some strength of the giants, kind of beefing your stats a little bit and your size if the situation approves of it. So as a bonus action, you can activate your Giant's Might, which then for the next minute gives you the following bonuses. First up, if you are smaller than large, and you have the space around you to do so, you will grow to a large size, which means you're going to double in size, filling in the space you're in. If for some reason you're in a space that can't fit a large creature, like a small hallway, a coat closet, then you won't be able to grow, but you'll still gain the other benefits. The next one is that you gain advantage on strength checks and saving throws, so that's pretty good. And the last thing is, once per turn, using your Giant's Might, you can deal an extra 1d6 damage with a weapon attack or an unarmed strike. So you grow big, you get stronger, you get to hit a little harder. All right. Sounds good. You can use this Giant's Might the number of times equal to your proficiency ability score modifier per long rest, and after a long rest you regain all your uses. Next up, at level 7, you get Runic Shield, which is a defensive ability. It's pretty common for characters to have an ability to be able to shield their allies, and that's what this one is. So when you see a creature within 60 feet of you get hit by an attack, you can use your Runic Shield to cause the attacker to roll another d20 and use that number instead of their first attack roll. So it's not like giving them disadvantage because they have to use the new number. So there is a potential downside that you see someone get hit, you say, I'm going to use my Runic Shield, and then the attacker rolls a nat 20, and then your ally is taking a critical hit instead of a regular hit. It's a risk, but the reward is also there. So use it as you see fit. This ability is usable the number of times equal to your proficiency modifier per long rest, and of course you regain all uses after a long rest. At level 10, you gain the ability Great Stature. This is more of a passive effect on your character. The first thing you're going to do when you hit level 10 is roll 3d4, and then your characters are going to grow that many inches taller. So it could grow anywhere from 3 inches taller to 12 inches taller. Arguably more importantly, the Giant's Might damage bonus you'll get increases from a d6 to a d8 instead. So using your Giant's Might, you'll be able to deal an extra d8 damage with a weapon attack or unarmed strike once per turn. At level 15, you gain the ability Master of Runes. Now, I said before, we're going to go about on all the runes in the next video, so come back to that to fully understand them. But some of the runes have an invoked ability, something kind of an active trigger that you can use. When this happens, the Master of Runes ability comes into play. So what this means is normally an invoked rune can be used once per long rest. If you are the Master of Runes, you can invoke that rune twice instead. So you get twice the usage out of it at level 15. At level 18, you get the ability Runic Juggernaut, which increases the potency of your Giant Might ability from level 3. The first thing that happens is instead of dealing 1d8 damage with your Giant Might damage dealing ability, you will deal 1d10 on each of your turns instead. So that's pretty cool. The next one is instead of growing to just a large size, you can actually grow to huge, which is 3 times the size. Again, this growth kind of depends on the space you're in. So if you're not in a space to be huge, you might just grow to large. And if you're not in a space to grow large, you'll just stay medium size. But the last one, which I thought was kind of neat, is the reach of you increases by 5 feet. So if you're using a regular weapon with a regular reach, normally that's a 5-foot reach, you'd be able to reach 10 feet instead. Or if you're using a polearm that normally would have a 10-foot reach, you would be able to reach 15 feet instead. Imagine pairing that up with something like Polearm Master, which lets you have opportunity attacks when people come into the range of your weapon. Having a 15-foot ranged weapon is pretty potent, but that is a level 18 ability. It's kind of high near the capstone, so who knows if you get to use it very much. Some thoughts on this class. The size change is an interesting one because I have mixed feelings about it. I like that you can change size. I like that on a grid space, you're suddenly able to threaten more areas. When you do get to gain more reach, it's pretty effective. You can actually kind of control the battlefield that way, as you'll have more spaces where if an enemy is there and they try to run, they could trigger an opportunity attack. So I like that kind of thing. But then there's a side of it that in some situations it might not be useful for a character to be that big, and then you're that big already or something. I know it only lasts for a minute. The giants might change, but it's still something to consider. The damage dealing I like from that. I think there could be some good synergies with other maneuvers. Fighting styles obviously could come into play heavily for this subclass, as all fighting styles are important. The runes have a lot of really fun abilities. I really like the runes, and that is why I keep saying come back in 2 days when the next video drops and you'll see what all the runes do. I like those abilities, they're pretty fun. But let me know your thoughts on the Rune Knight in the comments below. Let me know what you think about it, give me some input, and what kind of character you would build with this. I kinda dig it. If you liked the video, I invite you to hit the like button and share it with your friends and family. Comment below, let's boost the algorithm. I'm coming back from a pretty big hiatus, so it's kind of like coming back to a dead channel, which is sad to think about. But comment, like it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I appreciate you doing that. And if you need some minis, just by chance you need a perfect mini for your Rune Knight, check out my shop, Adventures in 3D. The link will be in the description below. You can go there, find a perfect mini for your character, have me 3D print it. Yes, I actually do all the 3D printing for it. I'll ship it out to you, and you can save 10% on your order by using the code RPGDaily10, so check that out. It's kind of cool. All that being said, I've been Richard. Thanks for watching.